put the whoosy on the whatsy. Attach the whatsy to the whoosy. Connect the thingamajig to the thingamabob, and that'll make the whatchamacallit.
Hey everybody, I'm going to apologize right out of the gate for the compromised video quality. We're doing some experimenting here today. I'm experimenting with ways to do this so I can just kind of do it in the moment and be done, and not have to do a bunch of editing afterwards to show the computer and then show me talking and whatever. So I have a setup now where I'm going to be able to just boop, switch back and forth between the two things manually, and that signal's getting captured. It does right now. The only camera that I have available to do that with is this this kind of janky webcam. So the video image is not quite up to its usual mediocre standards. So so there you go. There's that. That's why I look a little bit fuzzy now. But it should save me a bunch of time. I can just do this, and then the thing's done. I put the title in the end and the awesome, whatchamacallit music on there, and it's good to go. So, so this episode is going to be really cool. It's a very, very rare occasion for me where this mix ended up being entirely in the box. There were some iterations along the way where I experimented with some external compression and stuff, but ultimately I found a way, a plug-in on the music that I really liked. All the individual stuff I processed just in the computer. It turned out great. I was happy with it. At least turned out great for me. Keith was happy with it, and we had ourselves a done mix. It was at a time when it was sort of an interim location for me. I was moving out of my house and in a sort of little temporary rental spot in Topanga. It was like this little hippie cabin that Grace and I were staying in Topanga. So it was just a bedroom, and I just set up my computer and my little Strauss monitors and try to keep working. So I did this there. I worked on a bunch of Spencer Lee stuff there. I did a little bit of Death from Above stuff there. We actually recorded some vocals there. So it worked out. It was a very extremely simple setup, even more stripped down than what I have here in Topanga Dice. If you can hear stuff okay, and you have the time and the patience to get used to your environment, it can get done. So this one got done in that context, and it came out cool for me. So so this one, it's going to take a little while. This is one of those mixes where there's over 200 tracks in this thing. There's a lot of stuff in this track. So the circumstances were that some other folks were working on the track. They got to a point where they just weren't exactly sure, I think, the best way to sort of push it over the goal line. It really sounded great already, and they just needed a little bit of extra input or something, or somebody to come in and just with some new energy and go like, here we go, let's finish this. And so I got the call to do that. It was actually Matt Radosevich, or Matt Rad, that was the person that had initiated this. And I think there was another person who collaborated on the track, and I apologize, I don't remember their name. I'm not sure if I ever met them, or if I know who that is. Whoever you are, you did a great job on this. And so I got involved to try and help just push it over the goal line. So it's interesting. It ended up being like a mix and some additional production. We all got together at Barefoot and just added some, few last elements to try and, bring the thing to fruition. So I can show you what those are. It's interesting. I was picking through this a little bit, preparing for this, and it's a little tricky for me to remember for sure exactly what stuff was done at Barefoot. I'm pretty clear about it. Maybe I'm going to get some of it wrong. This was in the midst where there was a lot of crazy stuff going on. There's lawsuits and insane things. And so I'm finding that my memory of specific details in that time period is a little foggy. I was definitely very distracted with other stuff that was going on. So sometimes I can't really remember exactly what was going on. So I'm going to do my best to remember that stuff accurately. If I get it wrong, I apologize. But yeah, we'll at least be able to check it all out and see what all the mixing stuff is that happened. And so let me just play you a little bit of the song. It's a song called Horses, as you can probably see from the title. And it's a cool tune. It's Keith, and there's a girl that I think originally was involved with the writing of the song. This is another thing. I don't know the whole story here, but there was, you know, I think this is worth mentioning. It's, you know, can be somewhat uncommon in the music business, and Keith is an extraordinarily cool guy. And this is just, I only heard a little bit about this, so I'm maybe getting some of the details wrong, but I know the gist of it, that basically this girl was involved with this song. Keith came across the song and really liked it and thought he wanted to use it on his record. You know, sometimes songs will get written, they'll get pitched to a bunch of different people. And so the writers of the song, I think, ultimately wanted Keith to do the song, but this other gal had already recorded a version of it, was intending to use it on her record. And so Keith felt like it was wrong for him to just be like taking this song from this other artist. And so he invited her to be on the song with him, and so it would have a featuring credit on it. And I believe, let's see, I should remember her name. Yeah, so it's this gal, Lindsay L. And so Keith certainly didn't have to do that. He just thought it was the right thing to do, and so he invited her to be on the song, since she, you know, was going to put it on her record, and so it could still be a part of her whole thing. He's just a cool guy. That's just the kind of things he does. And so so she's on there, and a bunch of people collaborated on it. It's one of these you know, kind of modern pop country type songs where it's a huge combination of, you know, natural acoustic and organic instruments and a bunch of programmy stuff all kind of put together. It can be a very challenging mix situation, you know, trying to get all of these hugely disparate, you know, types of sounds and textures to all kind of glue together and add up to a cohesive thing. So it was a fun challenge for me to get it all to try and come together. So let's hear a little bit of the song. I'll just play you through the first chorus, and you can check it out here. So let me get to Pro Tools. There it is. So here it is. It comes in real simple, just acoustic guitar. I thought it was kind of cool. I ended up sort of stripping down the beginning a little bit, so it would come in just acoustic guitar. And let's see, let me get down to where the acoustic guitar is. Here it is. And then really expands from there. So check it out.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning. Sometimes you get a little bit insecure. Sometimes you wonder if you're even good enough, hiding from the morning when it's too much. But there's so much waiting behind the door. And I know, and I know, and I know that you just want to dance in the light. Don't you know, don't you know, don't you know you're alive? So just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your horses run, 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 run. Oh, let your horses run, 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 run. I saw you on the street just the other day.
So there you go. And there I am. Let me get it so I make sure I'm switching back and forth directly here. Yeah, it's going to take a little getting used to this new editing live in the moment. And so yeah, there you get it. You know, it's some big old pop country stuff. So there's a lot going on there, a bunch of cool sounds. You know, a few of them we added later on, and most of it that was done in the original version. So I was mostly mixing and just adding some elements here and there. So let me show you what's going on with this thing. First, I think this time I'm going to start with the bussing, because this was in an era when I was doing more of these like pop mixes where I know they're going to need stems. I was doing these, configuring things as stems. And so what ends up happening is, I'll just start from the top and go down here. So, so this is just the monitor output. This is what I'm monitoring while I'm mixing. And in this case, I knew that I would not be mastering this, and so I mixed this more without listening to my mastering chain. I would reference it a little bit at times to make sure that that translation would survive in some form or another, but mostly monitoring without the, you know, any sort of aggressive limiting on there, and you know, just let somebody else figure it out. So, so this is the monitor path that does not have any of the limiting, and so the way this works is all of everything ultimately shows up at music here and vocals here. So this is the same thing that I've talked about where you know, I like to do overall compression on the music bus that's separate from all of the vocals. So the vocals are not getting pulled down by the compression on the music bus. And so you can see that here. And so you can see what happened. I ended up using this UAD Elysia compressor plugin on all of the music. And it worked out great. Earlier on, probably was trying the Unfair Child and API 2500 and some outboard stuff, and for whatever reason, I don't know, I don't remember why, but I think maybe towards the end of the process, I think my Unfair Child was not available, and so I was like, okay, I'm just see if I can come up with something better, or something that will work in the computer, and I ended up being really happy with this Elysia thing. So we'll listen to that in a second. So here's all the vocals. They go to this mix bus here, and that shows up. There's a master for it that shows up here, or no, it's here, and then it gets divvied out to a couple places with these buses. And so one of these, this is the print with .ld. That means loud, and so that's these two plugins. So this is my sort of generic mastering chain right here, and so there's Pro L doing a bunch of work. There's this Karzog K-Clip Pro, and so you can see what's happening on the chorus. It starts grabbing pretty good.
Let your horses run to the limit like never before.
Okay, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of that. There's a lot going on in this session, so occasionally it hiccups in there. And I ended up putting the clipper after the limiter. I've heard a lot of people say that they prefer having the clipper first. You can see that I was experimenting both ways, and I prefer it afterwards for whatever reason. Just sounded better to me, so it ended up, you know, going limiter first, then clipper second. And so then I can switch to it here. So this is monitoring the mix. This is monitoring the master. So if I switch here, now we're hearing it with this limiting, and I've just turned it down to compensate for the 11 dB that's being added. So there's 9 dB here, another 2 dB here, and so with the limiting it sounds like this.
Just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost in
There it is without the limiting.
wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your horses run, run, run. Let your horses run, 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 run.
And so you can kind of hear what's going on there. I mean, it's what you expect from a limiter and a clipper. You know, the transients of the drums get sort of pushed down a little bit. They, you know, get eaten up by the limiter and the distortion and stuff. They get softened a little bit. And so the mix, I have a little extra point or poke on the drums to sort of accommodate for that. So when it gets mastered and limited, that the drums would still, you know, have a good presence and be punchy in there. So then so that's what was happening. But this, this limiting stuff here ultimately is not used on the final thing. It was mastered by somebody else, and I don't know what they used. But so for now, we're going to be listening to the unmastered version of it. In this case, it definitely, I think, sounds, it's more representative of the mix. So, so then I have all of these stem buses. And so there's drums, there's percussion, bass, guitar, keys, lead vocals, background vocals. And so these are the final stem masters, or this, the final stem faders. These are AUX faders. And on the way there, I did a little bit of overall processing on a couple of these stem groups. So here's the BGVs. And this was an interesting thing on this. One of the things that I was really hearing on this song is that the vocals needed to lay back. And so I literally just took all of the vocals and delayed them 1,000 milliseconds. And felt way better to me. So, yeah, so there you go. So here's the lead vocal, and this, it changes in different sections. So in the verses, I left the timing where it was, and it was really in the choruses where I felt like things needed to lay back, and so the lead vocals get laid back 500 samples there. And it was just one of the things that I think people were wrestling with the track, was getting it to really just feel right. And to me, the vocals felt a little stiff because they had all been like edited to just be right on the grid, and I think sometimes that's not really how people feel things, and the whole thing just kind of breathed and flowed better with the vocals laid back more in the choruses. Yeah, it just felt more musical to me. And so here's, I'm probably grabbing some stuff. This is probably automated as well on the Vocal Master. So, no, there's a fab filter. There's a bypass for that, and there's some soothe stuff, but that's not even active anymore. I ended up not using that. So, so yeah, so this is probably just active all the time. So I think it's just tucking in a little bit. There's some spots where there was some mid-range stuff that was sticking out a little bit, and so this is just grabbing that in the vocals. And then, yeah, so this is taking out a little bit of this sort of low-mid boxiness and adding a little presence, like 2K presence in there, just overall on the lead vocals. Those were probably adjustments that were made, towards the end of the process. Sorry, I'm having trouble. I got to remember to look at this camera. So I've got a lot of stuff in front of me to look at. So then, so in theory, I did this version when I do some of these, more pop type mixes. I'll have these available. So at the end of the mix, I can just do a bounce to disc of all the stems in one pass, and so I don't have to sit there and print, do a bunch of passes to print things. So it's all set up. I can just, all the buses are named, and so you can set up a multiple bus bounce to disc, and so I just select drums, percussion, bass, guitars, keys, lead vocals, background vocals, and just let them all print at the same time. So that was part of the motivation of doing the big multi-stem bus thing. And it's kind of handy too, because like you can just go, if you want to just like mute all of the guitars and get them out of the way, you're not having to dig through the session to do that. Generally, I like to organize the session sort of in the order of how I mix it. So the stuff that I start with in the mix is usually at the beginning, and then I just kind of move on down the line from there. So it's usually like drums, percussion, bass, guitar, keys, any sort of weird effects or whatever, then lead vocals, background vocals, because that's usually the order that I work through the mix in. So the session is set up that way. You'll see these are live drums here. There's some overdub live drum fills here. And then you get into all the percussion stuff. So there's a bunch of programmed stuff on this. That was a big part of what I worked on well, in the mix, I worked on this stuff a lot. And there's a ton of it. I mean, there's this tambourine, there's a shaker thing, there's 2 drum loops, there's these programmed hi-hats, these are all snares, these are claps, these are still snares. Then we get into, let's see, this is another snare, and then you start getting into kick drums. Like, it's a ton of samples in here. And the original version of the song had no live drums at all. It was all just the programming stuff. That was one of the things that got added when we were working at Barefoot and I got involved. So you can see all the drum programming stuff. One of the things that I did with this is I meticulously went through and listened to every single one of these samples, started adding them in and making sure that every single sample was really actually adding something of value to the overall blend of whatever the snare sound was, and also making sure that they were all in phase. So when I added one of these additional sounds that were all being layered, because a lot of them are just all playing at the same time. I mean, for the snare drum, I think there's probably like 8 samples that are layered up in there. Making sure that they're actually really in phase. So I spent a lot of time doing that everything really adds up properly with all these, samples. I think a lot of times what happens is you're just moving quick and trying to get a vibe going in the room, with an idea getting started, and you just keep throwing stuff in the session until people are excited, and you don't really have time to, go through and meticulously do that. I've definitely been there, so in the mix is definitely the time to do that. So I did that, and then you get into more percussion-y type stuff. There's some tom fills and these big drum boomy things and crashes, and then later we added this whole big like drum percussion thing that comes in the bridge, and actually there's some video of that we can check out. I was checking with Keith to make sure that he was cool with me doing this with his song on my YouTube channel, and so he was excited about having me do it, and sent me some video that he got of the thing. So I'll put that in here so we can check it out. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so then we get into bass stuff. So here's bass, and I try to color code everything in groups. So there's like up way back up here, there's the live drum stuff that we recorded. This is all of the drum programming and percussion stuff is all this green. Then there's 2 bass sources here. There's a synth bass in the beginning, and then the mighty Pino Palladino takes over and plays bass through the rest of the song. And then we get into guitars. Here's the acoustic guitar that starts the song. There's another acoustic guitar that comes in the chorus. And then there's just a whole bunch of really cool, tasty little guitar things that come in and out throughout the song. And so then we get into all of the keyboard stuff. There's a bunch of cool just keyboard textures and flavors that come in. There's some real piano. I think this piano was recorded at Barefoot. This was the one that I couldn't remember for sure. I think Matt played it, but it was a real piano at Barefoot. This is my Yamaha Grand. We'll check that out. And so there's a bunch of cool piano stuff in there. And then you get into the vocal stuff. Here's a bunch of effects for the vocals. I think some of this was probably already in the session that I kept, and then I added some of my own stuff to finish it off. You can see a lot of processing on the vocals. We'll dig through all of this and check out what's going on with the lead vocals on this. And then there's a bunch of cool layers, so generally in the verses, it's just a single lead vocal. In the choruses, there's a main lead vocal, and then there's like a pair of doubles that sort of thicken and widen it out. Okay, so then here, a couple little accented parts in the verse, more little accented bits, pre-chorus harmony parts, and then there's like a big chorus harmony thing. There's tracks of the gal Lindsay singing the chorus part. That's her here. And then a bunch of Keith singing the chorus part. So we'll check all that out. And then there's a bunch of background vocal stuff in the end, and some O's, and I mean, okay, so we're up here. We're almost at 200 tracks. You know, when I looked at the voice count, it was like over 200 voices being used in the session. So a lot of stuff going on in there. So, you know, get comfortable. Make sure you don't have anything imminent that's about to happen in your life. If you really want to see all this, it's going to take a while to dig through all of this, but I'm here to do it. Here we go. So, live drums all the way back up here. Boop, 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 boop. Let's look at the overall bus processing first. And so here is the main drum bus and all plugins. So this is obviously Puig Child 670 in series with the CLA LA2A plugin. And then some EQ, putting a little mid-range in there. And then this I ended up not needing or using. I was experimenting with phase with this. You can see this is flipping the phase, but didn't need it. Okay, and so then this sends to a bus. Let's see, what is this? Where is this doing? What? I almost had my answer. Okay, so it's going here. This is a reverb. Yeah, just a looks like a little, you know, deverb hall, large hall reverb, 4.5 seconds. So this is just probably, yeah, it's on a big hit somewhere right before the chorus. Just a big, you know, explosion of a reverb thing. And what's this? Okay, a little bit of EQ on there. So let's go back up to the drums. Okay, so then what I ended up doing, I wanted to just distort the drum mix. This is one of the ways, you know, if the drums weren't recorded to a tape machine, this was a day. We basically had a day to do all of the additional stuff with Keith there, and so I was moving real quick. I just, you know, had drums just recorded in the computer. I you know, set it up a way that I knew I'd be able to pull a good sound out of it. We had the marvelous Matt Musty there playing, and just recorded straight in the computer. And then a real quick way for me to get a little, you know, like harmonic distortion on the drums is to just run the whole drum mix through just good old lo-fi. This is really pretty cool distortion on drums. Okay, this is driving me crazy already. Okay, there we go. I think I should be back in action now. It's pretty great distortion on drums. So I just threw it on there to get a quick vibe, and it ended up, you know, working great for the final mix. I just kept it. And so the issue was that when I had the whole drum mix, including all of the low end of the kick drum, going to this, the low end was causing the distortion to kind of fart out too much. And so I split it up. And so this is basically all of the drum elements right here, except for the low endy parts of the kick drum. And those show up here so they could get blended in without going through the lo-fi distortion. So let me just show you what's going on with all that. We'll go to the chorus here so you can hear a little drum kit. The real low end part of the drum kit goes directly here. I didn't actually notice that earlier, but now it's clear to me. Okay, so this low endy part of the kick drum goes directly to the final drum stem and skips all of this compression. So all of this compression is only on this part of the drum sound. So let me show you what each of these sound like. So that's without the low endy part of the kick drum. That's without the lo-fi. That's with lo-fi. So that's the low endy part of the kick drum. And so this distorted thing gets compressed and EQ'd here. It sends to a reverb in one place and then gets blended with the low-endy part of the kit to go to the overall drum stem. And presumably a bunch of this other stuff, all of this, you know, yeah, a bunch of the percussion, yeah, there's some percussion stuff. A bunch of other stuff goes to that drum stem. Some of it goes to the percussion stem, some of it goes to the drum stem. And so it all ends up showing up up here on these two. And so, yeah, so if I turn this back on, yeah, so all the drums are going there. And if I add in all of the percussion stuff, boop, 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 boop. Oh my God, it goes on and on. Holy mackerel. Yeah, this is going to take a while. Okay, so that's with all the extra drum stuff. And when I mute these, we're still hearing a little bit of drums because this is another thing I noticed when I was digging through this. There was a certain point in the mix, towards the end of the mix, where just because of the combination of all the compression on the drum stuff, the compression on the overall mix, everything, there was a point where I couldn't get the drums to just poke out just enough to survive the limiting that would happen and stuff. And so what I ended up doing, it's just going straight to the music master. Straight to mix. And so there was just a couple of samples that I grabbed. So we'll see them light up down here. Man, this poor session, this thing. Okay, and so there they are. So these, you can see there's a little send on here. And those go directly to the main final mix bus, bypassing even the overall music compression. Because there was a point in the mix where it's like, even if I turn these up, the main music compression is just still turning them back down. It'll never fight its way through with all this other stuff. So I created an extra parallel send where I could just turn it up, and as soon as you turn it up, you just hear it poke through and have more presence in the mix. Here, let's see what that does. It looks like it only happens on the choruses. And so I'll turn all this stuff back on. So that's with it. There it is without it. There it is with it. Yeah, it just pokes out a little more. So if I turn everything back on,
Just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your horses run.
you know, it's kind of subtle, but it just has a little bit more of an immediacy to it. It just feels a little closer up for the kick and snare. I just sort of picked the couple of samples that would be good for poking out more. And it's a really good trick if you get to that point in a mix where something is just not fighting its way through and it doesn't seem like you can just turn it up and have it really make a difference. You know, just create an extra bus that navigates around all of the compression that it might be going through on the way there, and you can get it to just pop right out. So it's a good trick. One of the other things I wanted to show in this mix, this is a thing that I've been doing lately, is this bass compression. And so I create an extra send, an extra bus just for low-endy stuff. And so you can see it's not turned up very much. and it's compressing a lot. This is,
Just let your
I mean, it's just annihilating.
to the limit like never before.
Yeah, the sources are not on pre, and so I'm going to have to solo those as well. But it's going to be like the kick drums, the bass guitar, stuff like that. Yeah, so here's a bunch of the kick drum samples that are going there. You can see there's that bass compression bus. And then if we make our way all the way up to the bass guitar, da-da-da. Okay, yeah, so the 808 is going there. And here it is on Pino's bass. And so here we'll solo all that stuff. Yeah, so that's without it. And there it is with it. And so, you know, it adds a little more impact with the kick drum, you know, makes the kick drum hit a little bit harder and adds a stronger sustain to the bass. And at the end of the day, the other thing that it's doing is it's essentially functioning like a sidechain on the bass. Usually what I'll do is I'll have like a full level of the kick drum go there and like half level of the bass go there, so it's like 6 dB down. And so it's mostly being triggered by the kick drum, whenever the kick drum hits. And so the bass gets turned down every time the kick drum hits, and it functions a little bit like a side chaining thing. So in the overall mix, we'll see how noticeable this is, because it's pretty subtle, but it just makes the low end just feel like more solid. It's just holding everything up better. So we can check that out.
Just let your horses
That's with it.
to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your horses run.
Yeah, so that's, it is quite noticeable, even with, I have the monitors turned way down here so it doesn't get in my microphone, but even with that, I can hear it pretty clearly in the room, just the strength that it adds to the bass guitar and the impact of the kick drum. I've been really digging that a lot, especially for more modern poppy sounding stuff. It's a great trick. So there's that, the little bass compression bus. So I guess it's time to start digging through the 200 tracks. Let's see how far we get. All right, here we go. So here is the low-endy part of the kick drum, and I have two versions of it. And there's that, and then this got delayed a little bit more. So they're both gated, and I believe obviously these are both the same source signal. So this was Bach microphone that's you know, a solid state version of his 507 microphone, that capsule, and so it's a great mic for low endy stuff. So here is first part of it, obviously low passed. And there's a bunch of this going on with it. Yeah, it sounds like it's low pass more than what I'm seeing in this plugin for sure. But yeah, maybe it really just sounded like that coming out of the mic. Okay, and then so here's this one. This one really is more aggressively low passed, super subby, big boost at 43 hertz. This one is a boost up in the punchier 76 hertz. There's a little more, there is some subby stuff going on there, and then just clearing out some of the low mid stuff. That's 185 hertz there. So yeah, it's taking out that same thing there, but then really emphasizing the low part of it more there. And then here's the attacky part of the sound. So, and so all of those together sound like that. And the cool thing is like when you have control over the sort of brighter attacky part and the subbier bassy part, you know, I have control over the relationship between those, and I can change that blend. So like, yeah, okay, so this comes up a little bit more than the others, so I actually added more of the attack in the choruses. So there's the kick drum sound. And let's check out this stuff. So no delaying here. It's gated, as you'd expect for the kick drum. We can, oops, sorry about that, grumpy computer. So let's hear this. There it is with the gate. Yeah, this mic just has a really cool kind of mid-rangey attack to it. So I just high-passed a little bit, took out some of the mid-range. That's what it sounded like originally. That's with the EQ. So some of my favorite FabFilter stuff here. And so I'm adding more compression to just the sort of, you know, everything above the low stuff. So this is like 162 hertz and up is getting compressed and distorted and then turned down. So without this, yeah, it just sounds more like an average kick drum sound, and that it brings out more of the ambience that's hovering around the microphone, and it adds that sort of crunch and sort of splaying out of the attack on the kick drum, so it's not just that one tiny little click sound. One of my favorite tricks there. Let's see, what's this? Okay, and then adding a lot of presence to it, so a bunch of 2K and a bunch of this 15K thing. So that's without it. There it is with it. And then again, kick drum all together. Okay, so snare drum. Looks like I probably had this for playing with phase. Nothing's going on there. And then here's some EQ, adding some mid-range bark to it and body. And then a bunch of presence, similar move to the kick drum. So a bunch of 2K, ton of the 15K. And what's this guy? This is more presence, more 15K, 3 and 3.5K. So here's the snare drum, close mic. Originally sounded like that. So there's with that EQ. There's with that. And then finally with that. And no compression on this, so whatever's going on the main mix bus, you know, this stuff we checked out earlier, the main drum bus. So it's all being compressed by this Puig Child 670 and the CLA LA2A thing. And so no individual compression on this. And same with the kick drum. Yeah, there's no compression on there either. Okay, so then there's more. This is a duplicate of the 57 snare mic. This is just for low-end punch on the snare drum. So it's gated, really catching just the harder hits. I was probably playing with phase here, but didn't have to change anything. And here's the extremely subtle EQ move. So there's a low pass at 80 hertz and then a huge boost at 89 hertz. So this is a lower tuned snare drum, so you get that really low, you know, deep punch on the snare drum. And then a little bit of distortion on here, good old Sans amp. So originally it sounded like that. Then there's with the EQ. And then with the distortion. And so you can hear what it's doing when it blends in with the original snare. That's without it. That's with it. Okay, 67. So I had two mics on the snare drum, a 57, and I had something that's a little more hi-fi. This was a thing that I did more way back in the 90s. So on the first Third Eye Blind record, the snare configuration on that was a 57 and a 67 on top for pretty much that entire album. So this was sort of revisiting that combination. So here's the 67, and the thing that's kind of cool about the 67 is it can just barely handle the level. Matt Musty isn't playing insanely hard. He's playing solid but kind of relaxed, and so I can get away with it on this. But a 67, if somebody's really mashing hard on the drums, would never be able to handle the level. But it's part of what's cool about it. You can hear it just kind of like barely hanging on for dear life, and it makes the drums sound a little more explosive, And so I'm using this like for just like a smack sound, a brighter smack sound. So when you blend it all together, and actually here, we'll look at the processing on this. Yeah, so I'm scooping out a ton of this low mid stuff and adding a ton of presence, 5.6K on here. So with these guys all together, okay, it sounds like this. That's without it. Yeah, I think it just opens up the sound in a nice way. It's just got an airier top end, and it seems to be picking up a little more of the like bottom the snare, just the snare side a little bit, and it just opens up, makes it sound like a more complete sound, So then there's overheads. This was definitely my pair of C12As. That's kind of my go-to when I know I need to have just a good, great, solid drum sound real quick, and I don't really have a lot of time to screw around and place mics and experiment and stuff like that. I just put my C12As up over the drums. They just sound beautiful. So that's definitely what these are. The drums were set up underneath a drumbrella, and I don't remember whose snare this was. This might be Matt Musty's snare. He brought some snares with him, and I think one of his ended up winning. And then the kick drum is probably my my vintage. It was either the vintage Ludwig or the Sugar Percussion signature guy. It was one of those two for the kick drum. And yeah, actually, I think this was the signature kick drum. And then, okay, so there's, for the overheads, looks like I'm taking out a bunch of 360 hertz. It's like 4.5 dB there. Adding some high mids, 2.3K. And what's this? Oh, cool, yeah, so this is the UAD 1073. This is pretty cool. It definitely sounds pretty familiar for me to what original 1073s sound like. That top, high-end boost on 1073s is extremely aggressive on the original things. It was one of the things that I actually didn't super love about those, is like when you turn that up, man, it's no joke. It can get real harsh real fast, but the C12As are real smooth sounding, so I think this ended up being a good choice here. So that's with all the EQ. That's without it. There it is with it. So now we can hear this with the close mics. Just opens it up nice. Looks like I was just balancing left and right here. I didn't get that exactly right when it was tracked. But if I reverse the phase on this, you can hear how much the snare drum thins out. And there it is in phase now. So important to get things in phase, man. You'll just be over EQing everything to death if you don't get the phase right. So you can probably hear that the toms have no bottom heads on them. We went for kind of a tweaky tom sound on this more sort of like Phil Collins-y thing. And so no bottom heads on the toms. And let's see, there's, let me find a spot. I have the toms edited, so they only play where I need them. And it looks like, for the most part, I'm not really using them. They're really mostly coming from the overheads, because they play. Yeah, I didn't even unmute them here, so somewhere along the way. Okay, there we go. Here's a spot where the toms come on. Yeah, and so yeah, so I'm kind of only turning these on when they need a little more presence to just punch through whatever's going on. But you know, Musty plays with really good internal balance of the drum kit, and so plays the cymbals nice and soft, good solid kick and snare, you know, nice aggressive hits on the tom. So they're you know, any mic that's around the drum kit, you'll have the right balance of stuff, and so you don't necessarily need to turn up close mics of things, you know. Okay, so there's that. There's some mono kit mics. Let's go back to the chorus here. Kind of a tweaky little sound. Just a bunch of presence getting added. Yeah. It adds a nice solid mid-range to the overall blend. I like that. It balances it out a little bit. It's not so scooped out sounding. And then this guy, Mono Room. This is very, very quiet in the blend. Yeah, so I don't know if it ever gets turned up anywhere. It doesn't. Yeah, this, you know, this probably just got left on. So yeah, so this is trying to be more, have a little more low end to it. Probably have the same presence thing going on. Yeah, a little extra 2K in there. So that's not a huge contributor to what's going on, but. Okay, so here is the main room mics. And I'm trying to remember what these were. I think these are Coles. And I really like the sound of the kick drum in these. It has this like, it almost has like an electronic drum quality to it. It's definitely just him playing drums in the room, but it's so cool. The one on the right side, really cool. And for this, the low end that I'm getting from the close mic on the kick drum is way more solid than what I would get in here. And this needed to say it's kind of tighter and punchier. And so I took a lot of the low end out of this. And so, yeah, I was probably playing with phase, didn't need to change it there. Here's an overall EQ. I was probably monitoring this while we were tracking it. I typically only use this EQ plugin while I'm tracking, and it was a good move, so I left it. Okay, and so then here we go. Here's distorting, you know, above 500 hertz, which adds more presence and stuff. And then this, I'm actually widening the stereo image of the room mics by delaying one side of it. So you can hear it sort of slap across the speakers. That's without it. So in context, that's with the slap. Yeah, it just, for me, it just adds more dimension to the sound. You just hear it sort of bouncing around in the room more when it's delayed a little bit, and just widens it out and makes it, you know, not so just pointy all in one place. So again, that's with the slap. That's without it. Yeah, I really miss it like on the tom fills, you know. And then it looks like I have extra room mics, a duplicate of the room mics set up for just when he plays tom fills. And so that is this, and there's no phase changing happening. Same EQ there, same Saturn thing there, and then same slap. So there's a duplicate of everything, and then right here, I'm adding some room to this. So this is the Air Reverb plugin, and then a ton of compression with this old school, you know, Bomb Factory 1176 plugin. I actually like that thing for some stuff, and then even more compression with this. So this thing is probably super blown up. Let's see what it sounds like by itself. Yeah. So see what this guy's doing. Not that much actually. Not hitting it that hard. Okay, and that must do that reverb gets turned on later somewhere. Okay, so okay, yeah, so it just adds a little more room to when he goes to the toms. It's kind of nice having it open up when he plays the drum fills. Okay, and so then this is another duplicate of the room mics, and this is used for a backwards reverb effect. And so you can see I have it reversed at 73 BPM, so that's the tempo of this song. So I believe it makes it, the backwards reverb tail is 1 beat at 73 BPM. And so there are places earlier in the song, so I had to pull all of this stuff forward so the backwards reverb would show up at the right time. And so yeah, so all of this gets pulled forward 1 beat. So if I put the resolution to 1 beat, so there it is. And so this gets turned on, and you get this. And so here's the backwards reverb effect by itself. And with everybody. It happens again here. And in context, you can see what that sounds like. And this one too. And so without it, you know, makes it a little more eventful, I guess. You know, it wasn't necessary, but you know, I always love a good backwards reverb. This is a cool way to do it without having to do all kinds of like reversing of things and all kinds of shenanigans. You know, just this space reverb plugin. Turn on the reverse mode, set it to the tempo of the song, and you get yourself some, you know, some backwards reverb tails that lead up to whatever the element is if you pull it forward. So that's pretty much the live drum kit. You know, we designed this part that he plays here to play off of
hiding from
all of the program
it's too much, but there's
that are going on.
someone waiting behind
Tons of
the door.
programming stuff.
And I know, and I know, and I know.
And that was sort of my feeling with the song, is that it, at least for my taste, it was a little too robotic sounding, and I wanted to have some human elements in there that weren't just identical every time, and so robotic, and just have things that breathe a little bit more and move around a little bit. And so you can hear it here. The little ghost notes that the if we turn off the live drums, oh, they're we're still hearing them because they're solo isolated there. Yeah, so here we go. Turn off the live drums. It's cool. A bunch of cool elements in there. The live drums just kind of help the groove, you know, roll along and give it a little bit of human life in there. So that's the overall drum thing. I'm trying to think if I missed any of the processing here. I think we got all of this room stuff, and all that. Yeah, we got all that. Okay. So then later on, we ended up overdubbing some tom fills in this section. Because he plays a very basic, you know, on the main drum pass. And I wanted to have some flexibility with those tom fills. I had him play a bunch of different stuff so I could experiment with what fills were going to work where, have that solid, you know, drum beat going all the time, and just have him overdub fills in that section. And so, you know, it's just kind of like a Phil Collins-y sounding thing. And so that is this stuff. Ton of plugins on here. Let's see what happened with that. So this is all just probably playing with phase. And so there's some close mics, and then there's a mono room mic. So here, let's hear it. And then the overhead. So this was basically the same setup was being used for recording his main, you know, drum pass. And so I just captured, you know, I didn't need the snares and snare mics, kick mics, all that other stuff, so I left that off, and we just overdubbed with overhead mics, close mics on the toms, and a mono room mic to capture this. And so, let's see, there's a bunch of reverb and all kinds of stuff going on here, so, but let's hear this first. So that's just the close mics. And then this is with the overhead and the rooms. And so it looks like there's a little bit of EQ there, but all the other EQing is just happening on the blend of everything. Is there a little bit of, okay, yeah. So this looks like I'm doing a similar trick. I'm delaying one side 16 milliseconds to just kind of widen out the overheads a little bit. Just give it more dimension. Okay, so what do we got? What do we got going on here? Okay, reverb. Okay, nice gate reverb. Yeah, we really were going for the Phil Collins thing here. And so then this is probably lo-fi, some distortion on there. And then Saturn. So this is a similar move. This is at about 700 hertz and up is all getting distorted a lot. And there's no other compression or anything else going on. It's just distortion in the mids and highs. This is like a slappy thing. So there's 29.7 milliseconds. It looks like this is 23 milliseconds. Am I seeing that right? Yeah, 23 milliseconds. A little bit of detuning. It's just like a stereo widening thing. And turned down. They're at half volume, minus 6 dB. Okay, a little bit of brightness, just a smidge of 5.6K and like 4 or 5 dB of 15K. Devil Lock, this thing is awesome for really blowing up a sound. So it looks like I left those at their default and just blended it to just really, blow this up and thicken it. Valhalla, a vintage verb, so there's a longer reverb on there that you can hear. Another 1176, the CLA 1176, and then what's this last guy? Oh, a little clippy thing. Interesting. Wonder why I put that on there. It's just put a little ceiling and just clip it a little more. That's very odd. Huh. Let's hear it without it. It's good. Yeah, the little clicky attacks don't stick out as much with this clippy thing on there. That's cool. So in context with the live drums, you get this. And this is all happening at the same time as these big room drum things. We might as well check those out now. That's all this stuff. And so this was me and Matt Musty out in the room playing these big tribal drum type vibes. Cool, yeah. So this was the thing, one of the things that Keith sent me a video of. I'll play that for you now. There you go. Yeah, there's me and Matt Musty banging on some toms in the room there. Yeah, it was interesting what ended up happening because we're playing the toms and we're playing the rims as well. I wanted the toms brighter, but the rims got too bright. And so I ended up having to do, I noticed this earlier, that there's automation on this EQ because it was just poking me in the ear too much. And so whenever it does one of these rim hits, it turns down this extra brightness, this 5.6K. So check out what happens here. And so, so we're brightening things up mostly. And what is this guy doing? Yeah, just pulling out some low mids. This is 310 hertz here. Looks like I experimented with some other stuff on this, but ended up not using it. But yeah, you can hear how dark this was originally. It's just going to eat up way too much room in that low mid range. There's too many other things going on there, just guitars and basses and voices and stuff. And so you've got to open it up. And then there's a little bit of delay. This is looks like a dotted eighth delay on there. And so, yeah, so it's that bump, 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 bump timing. Yeah, it just sounds like there's more grace notes. There's more grace notes being played in the part. Makes the whole thing kind of roll along a little better. So that was the cool tom overdub thing. And then let's see. We'll go back up here. We can start getting into all these other elements. So yeah, so that was like the tom overdub. Yeah, so that's all the live drums. We've covered that pretty well. Okay, we've got ourselves a tambourine. Comes in on the chorus. It's a good spot for it. Let's check it out. So this was already in the session. I don't know what the original source is, but no EQ. A little bit of reverb on there. Yeah, I think Matt probably put that on there. Yeah, nice compression on there, so the accented hits aren't, you know, don't stand out too much. So without it, there it is with it. Then we've got a Kabasa thing. Yeah, that's a good groove motivator there. Let's see this. Yeah, so this must have had some crazy high end on it. I don't know if I put that on there. I probably did put this on there. Yeah, I think it's more common for me to use this EQ plugin than Matt. So that thing was probably just messing with other stuff too much, the cymbals and sibilants and the vocals and stuff like that. Needed to like compartmentalize it a little bit. Okay, drum loop. Okay, yeah, I recognize this drum loop. Yeah. Yeah, I recognize this drum loop. It's one of the ones that was on this breakbeat record that I made for Paris a long time ago. You know, it's just a good old vintage breakbeat. I don't know what the original source is from it, but it sounds like they chopped it up and changed the pattern a little bit. And so then there's another drum loop, and I'm trying to see where this actually gets unmuted. Oh, here it is. Looks like verse 2. This drum loop comes in. Yeah, so it's just a hi-hat thing. Yeah, it adds up cool with the other loop. I get it. Yeah, it's a cool pattern. Okay, and then there's hi-hat in there. What's going on here? Yeah, so on the loop, you can tell this was just changed to just be high-end stuff. Yeah, that's what the original sounded like. It's cool. Just adds, you know, some cool high-end energy and, you know, percussive syncopation up there. Okay, so let's get into some of these samples and stuff. 90s snare, high passed. Yep, API 2500 plugin. This is definitely Matt stuff there. Okay, cool. Just splashy tambourine hit. Yeah, I think I added this. Get it to poke out a little bit in a specific, just a very specific frequency range. I sort of was saving that 2K range for anything that was an event that needed to jump out. And so, you know, other stuff like the vocals and other things, you know, the keyboards and stuff are sort of tame, you know, are tamed in that range a little bit. And then when there's ever a guitar thing or a percussion thing or something that needs to poke out, I could use that frequency range to get it to poke through. Let's see, what's this? Cool ambient percussion thing. See what this one sounds like. So these two blend together. This looks like it's probably just deverb. Yep, deverb on these. Deverb's good, man. Just works. It's great natural sounding reverb. Okay, and then they layered up a bunch of clap stuff here. Let's hear the clap layer. Oh, definitely some snares in there. Yeah, so there's all the clap stuff. So this is air reverb on there. R verb. I know that's a Matt thing. He loves that thing. A little bit of EQ going on there. Okay, so then now we got some snare samples. So that's a knockier, more aggressive sounding snare. I can barely hear this one. It's so quiet. Okay, just kind of scooping out mid-range and stuff. 2500, adding some attack to it. Okay, so this has got sort of a brighter, sustained high end on it. Also very, very low in the blend. This is clearly, that was the main thing that I ended up focusing on in the blend. And so, so all these snares sound like that. Okay, they keep coming. There's more snares. This one, let's see what happened with this. Okay, so there's the 2500, me adding mid-range and a little bit of brightness, and then, yeah, this one's bypassed. Yeah, so just a tiny little bit of bottom end on this. Okay, and so then we'll keep moving here. So this is another snare sample. Okay, adding a bunch of 16K to this, bunch of brightness. So there it is without it. There it is with it. Good old API 2500 plug. Transient designer. So this comes on somewhere. Yeah, so this comes on in the beginning. And it's aggressive too. Oh my Lord. So that's with it. And here it is without. Yeah. Yeah, I just needed it to impact more in the beginning.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning. Sometimes you get a little bit insecure. Sometimes you wonder if you're even good enough.
So let's see what this stuff is. There's another snare here. And so transient designer here, that just stays on. So this is like a, it's like 1E and a 2. It goes boom, boom, bap. It's that part of the pattern.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning.
Little distorted kick sound. This got low passed. Oh yeah, this this was me. I put this low pass on all the drums in the beginning, and then had them open up.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning. Sometimes you get a little bit insecure. Sometimes you wonder if you're even good enough.
Yeah, so it was really just to try and get this thing to grow. You know, have it start shrunk down a little more, and then have a place to grow as more elements come in and stuff, and just add to the dynamic of how the song builds. So, so yeah, that's pretty crazy. You know, if you go here and check it out. It'll pull up everything that has that automation on it. And I think I probably even made a group for editing that. Yeah, the drum filtering group, so I can turn that on. And so every track that has that filter, I can adjust it. Okay, I'll probably leave that off for now. That'll cause problems. Okay, so moving on. So what is this? This is this distorted guy, I think, right? Yeah. And so when the filter comes off, more high end there. Super dry. They call it the dry 80s kick. Yeah, dry 80s kick. Yeah, I actually found it to be a little bit too pointy, so I tamed some of that clicky high end a little bit. Okay, then here is the army of main kick samples. And these generally looks like there's not a lot of EQ going on. You can see me playing with the phasing on them. Yeah, so this thing just comes in occasionally. Okay, I can't even tell. I can't even hear what this is. Oh yeah, so this is a low boomy thing. Just getting filtered off. So a lot of this stuff is getting bussed to bus 1 and 2, and it shows up here, and so it all is getting this just a tiny taste of this long reverb on there, a little bit of overall lo-fi distortion, API 2500 compression. So I'm guessing, you know, this is here. Let's just solo everything. Let's go into this bus. More thickening of compression with the double lock. And then that's probably me just adding mid-range and high frequency presence. So there it is without the processing. There it is with. Okay, so this guy's automated to come on and off. What is this? That guy's automated to come on and off. So where does that happen? Yeah, so this is also in the beginning. So when it gets filtered down, a little more like mid-range presence and enhancing the attack with this. So I think that's really because like when you filter off all that high end, you lose so much of the kind of like attack presence, and so I think it felt like I need to put some of that attack back in there in order to you know, keep it so it punches through, even though you're losing a bunch of the high end. So that transient designer and adding a little extra mid-range knock in there was helping make it cut through when it was filtered down. Okay, and so then there's a bunch of tom stuff here. Okay, yeah, so there's some more. So crashes. Let's see what big drum is. This guy. shrunk down. Yeah, so it's just a little ambient hit there. And this is like a backwards thing. So that's a bunch of the stuff that sort of cruises through the whole song. And you know, like I mentioned before, there was even more kick and snare samples and stuff floating around in there. I kind of pared it down to my favorite stuff that was really feeling like it was the most effective, and then went through and made sure that the phasing was really adding up properly on all of these things that are being layered up together in here. And then the other thing that happened up here, I feel like this is sort of unfair to Mr. Musty, that you're seeing all of these edits in the drums, and he's not a drummer that really needs to be edited. And really what was happening is I wanted his live feel on the drums, but I need it to be phase accurate with all the samples that it's being layered with. And so I basically edited everywhere there is a significant kick or snare hit that is layering with the samples, and made sure that they lined up exactly the same with the samples every single time. So there isn't one hit where his live kick drum sound with the samples sounds really, really big and huge, and sometimes it's super thin, because if the timing's off just even by a minuscule amount, you know, those frequencies can cancel each other out. So the same thing with the snare. So I went through, I'll zoom in here so you can see what's going on. Yeah, let's get up to the chorus. So like everywhere there's a significant hit, so here's like Mr. Musty's snare drum. So here's his snare drum, and it's duplicated for, you know, all the mixing stuff that I was doing. And we'll set up our grid for bars and beats. Okay, yeah, so there's this amount between the snare and where the grid is. And if we look at how many samples that is, 130. We go to the next snare hit right here. Okay, so here's basically right where the tack is. Go back to bars, beats. Select like that. Let's see what the thing is. 136. You know, so they all end up probably within, you know, 4 or 5 samples. That's a tight enough, you know, resolution to make sure that the low frequencies stay in phase with all of the snare drum stuff. I did the same thing with his kick drum as well. And so, you know, it's just to make sure that everything lines up the same way every time he hits the kick or snare, and then everything else in between. So like this hi-hat, this grace note, you know, wherever I can. So these couple of grace notes, these couple of notes, you know, I leave as much of the human feel in as possible, so I can have it breathe a little bit and sound like a person playing, but be phase tight with the samples that are being hit. So, it's, you know, wherever he hits, boom, 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 I put edits in those spots, you know. So here's a grace note here. I'm not going to worry about that because it doesn't have to be phase accurate with you know, a sample or something like that. That one can just breathe a little bit. Here's a more, you know, in between stuff, the cymbals and all of that. So to hear what this is like, you mostly hear it on the kick drum. I have it set up so this is all of the live drum buses here, and I have 3 of these just little trim plugins that are all set up with the phase reverse, so I can just bypass these on and off, and we can hear the difference of it being in and out of phase. So that's in phase. There it is out of phase. really lose a lot of the weight on the kick drum. We'll go back to the beginning. So hear it in phase again. So there you go. I mean, that's the importance of you know, keeping that stuff consistent. So the low end isn't changing all the time on the kick drum, or the snare drum is, you know, changing how it's impacting, how it blends with the samples. So you know, it looks like when I'm zooming in here, I think I may have done this by hand. I don't remember for sure, but I think I just went through and just did it by hand. It probably took an hour or so to do it that way, but you know, at the end of the day, then it's really right. So to not just leave it to Beat Detective to try and figure it out and hope it gets everything right. You know, I really need it to be exactly perfect for each hit. So that's I think we've covered all the drum stuff. Yeah. So let's dive into the bass. So first, there's the first bass element that comes in is this synth bass, and this is real simple. There's nothing on it, so whatever the sound was, this was already in the session when I got it. And so, you know, whatever this was, you know, they got it right going in, because there's no EQ or plugins, or I didn't really have to mess with it. There is just this compressor for side chaining. I think I may have added this. I'm not sure, but yeah. So bus 13. There's probably a kick drum sending here. Okay, yeah, so here's synth bass. Yep, so just a little side chaining. We can probably figure out where that came from. It's going to be one of these kick drums somewhere. Yep, here it is, bus 13. It's pre, so it'll sidechain consistently whether I change this level or not, or whatever. So yeah. So then there's the live played bass, or the bass that's played by a human being, a particularly wonderful bass playing human being, Pino Palladino, played on this. And so this is just a DI going in here. So I ended up putting a lot of stuff on here to try and get it to you know, have a little more life to it. And so I really needed this to be super punchy and percussive, and that's a lot of what this is. I mean, I used every single plug-in slot in here. Let's see, let's make I'm gonna make a duplicate of this so we can. So this is where I ended up with it. And so when you hear that in context, particularly with the drums, let's hear it just with the drums. Man, it's slow getting around in this session. Holy mackerel. So sluggish. There's so much going on here. So, so you can hear all that really percussive attack in there. I really wanted it to punch through, and so you hear the syncopation of the bass to the drums. That's what I thought was really, really cool about this. So check that out. And I felt like that was one of the things that was missing in it, is that the chorus didn't have enough movement to it, because you weren't really feeling all of the syncopation between the bass and the drums. It just becomes a more intricate sort of rhythmic part when you combine the two. And you know, the original sound. Let me see if I can match up these. And it's a good bass sound. It's a really consistent, you know, deep, cool bass sound. It just didn't have any punch to it. And so that's why. So let's check out everything that's happening here. There's a gate. That was just to clean up some noise in between because there's so much processing on here. And then something to get rid of noise. Again, there's so much compression going on. Okay, so massive mid-range boost here. So this is like at, you know, 870 hertz, 2K, just a huge amount of boosting going on. There's a little bit going on here, like, you know, 285 hertz. Okay, and then more massive boost in the mid-range, massive boost in the high end, and tons of additional compression. This is a huge part of what's happening. So if we solo this out, that's without it. Okay, and then transient master, adding a bunch of you know, finger attack to it. And then this was interesting. So this one is really emphasizing the low frequencies more. That I just wanted more of a low thump in there when so you can feel the thump of his finger hitting the string. And so this guy is doing that. Without it, that's important. And then I'm trying to like even everything out with this Elysia compressor because once you add all of this like transient enhancing stuff, sometimes it can get a little out of control. And so I like to put, you know, a compressor after it to just try and even some of that craziness out. So that's what this guy's doing. If I bypass that, yeah, so that sort of, you know, glues it all together. The transient stuff and the sustain of the note gets all glued together there. So then, let's see, this even more presence added to this, a ton of 3K, okay. That's without it. There it is with it. And even more of this, more distortion. This is not compressing, but yeah. And I ended up not doing anything. Yeah, so it's all just mid-range stuff. Yeah. So, man, that's a huge part of it as well. That's a lot of the mid-range snap on there. Okay, and then just a little EQ. There's without the EQ. You can see I'm patting it down a bunch. It looks like I also phase reversed it. And so that was probably the result of working on the downbeat of the chorus, making sure that the bass and the kick drum and everything feels really solid when it all lands on the downbeat of the chorus. Here, let's check that out. Let's see if that's a big difference on this thing. So here we are going in that first chorus. Okay, then let's flip it the other way. Yeah. Yeah, I can feel that on my system here. Here it is flipped again. This is theoretically correct. Yeah, that feels like at least what seems right, you know, on my monitors and here. The kick drum and the bass guitar feel more connected, and it's just boom. You feel a nice solid landing there. So there's the live bass. It looks like there's some stuff that automates here and there. Okay, yeah, so in the second verse, it looks like I'm just sort of mellowing it out a little bit. Yeah, so it's not quite as intense with all the extra attack and stuff. So then it all comes. So there you go. Punchy DI bass there with 500 million plugins. I guess, you put enough plugins on there and it'll do something. Okay, so moving on, we'll get into the guitar. Here's the acoustic guitar. And so this was already in the session, and I don't know if some of this EQ was probably already on there, and I don't know about that. Okay, yeah, this was interesting, this automated stuff that comes in and out. So we'll check that out. I added a little bit of warmth to it, and then a little bit of presence there. So there's this EQ. Yeah, that's definitely important. And then this guy mashing real hard on there. Okay, so that's an important transition. What I wanted to do in the mix was have it start off real mono and just intimate and simple, just like dude playing an acoustic guitar on the porch kind of thing. And then it has this moment where everything expands out. And so what I ended up doing is having this as sort of a stereo widening trick. And so there's they're hard panned out, and they're a little bit detuned, it looks like. Or let's see, no, that's panning. There's delay, and okay, yeah, there's no pitch stuff on this. And is there any modulation? There's no modulation on this that I can see. And so it's just delay that's widening it out. Oh, I see. So this delay is off. And so, yeah, now we can see it. So this is 16 millisecond delay that just creates a little width. Because I didn't want, when it goes wide, I didn't want the acoustic guitar to all of a sudden just only be in one speaker. And be that stark. There was no room mic capture with this, so I couldn't like put a room mic on the other side, so there's like a little phantom of the guitar over there. So I'm manufacturing that with this stereo tap delay. And so this guy is turned down 11.3 dB and it's delayed 16 milliseconds. So you can hear this transition where it happens. Yeah, and if I turn this off, then it's very stark, just all the way over there. And there it is, just creates a little phantom of the guitar on the other side, a little width. You can hear how it functions with the other instruments here. It's just another way to sort of get this track to start kind of small and intimate and keep expanding out until you finally, reach the big explosion here. And so at this point, there's an additional acoustic guitar that joins in. And so it looks like I keep this on there, and this acoustic guitar gets added to the blend, so you have an equal helping of acoustic guitar. Yeah, so it's a different strum pattern. And so actually it looks like what happens in the chorus is I get rid of this. This gets bypassed. So I just noticed that. And I add some additional compression to it, or I replace the compression. So this gets bypassed. So so we change the sound up a bit. We keep this EQ and this EQ, but it becomes, since we have this acoustic guitar to pan opposite it. I don't need this anymore. And for the different type of, strumming in the chorus, I wanted to change the compression a little bit. I believe this is probably... Yeah, it's just a little punchier, a little more percussive sounding in the chorus. I think it was just to get it to sit better and cut through a little better once there's all this other stuff going on. And so this acoustic guitar, looks like there's a little bit of EQ there, some brightening here, a lot of brightening there. This is just trying to like smooth out the texture of the high end on this acoustic guitar. And then this has CLA LA2A on it. So let's see what all this is doing. Yeah, because this acoustic sounds like it was probably pretty much totally uncompressed when it went in. So then this, let's check this out. So that's cool. It adds a thicker, more colored, it has more harmonic coloration just in the high frequencies. I've talked about this a lot. I use that plugin to sort of emulate what tape machines do. Tape machines the amount of distortion increases as you get higher and higher in the frequency range. And so I'm just very specifically, everything above 3K is just getting a bunch of extra distortion added to it. It just helps it sound less kind of plinky, and things get sort of, smoothed out in the way they're being strummed up there, and you can have more high frequency presence without it, poking out at you. So here's that. So this is that big 12K boost. Here's just tucking in some mid-range. Yeah, this really needed to go away. That's way too clunky sounding. Okay, yeah, so it looks like I experimented with the CLA LA3A and didn't dig that. I experimented with this, didn't dig that. I used the Pultec instead, probably, yeah. And so these didn't get used at all. So here's the two acoustic guitars together. And then in context. Okay, so then, what's this? This is some sort of little guitar effect guy. Cool, yeah. So, I don't know if this was always like this, but if I did this or if they'd already done this, but I had this, pan across the speakers, just have a little movement in there. And I don't know if this is, what is this? There's a 57, 421. So it's just two different mics. On a guitar performance, and I used them to pan across. So in context, it does this. Pretty subtle. And then here's some more of these sort of guitar swell effecty kind of thing. And so there's some delay on there, a little bit of, yeah, this looks like stuff that was probably already happening in the session. And so let's see, this delay, only has 18% wet and 616 BPMs. That sounds like it's, you know, a dotted eighth kind of vibe. Same thing here, so those are the same. And yeah, so you can hear these guys. Yeah, so it's sending to this verb a couple of reverbs in here, so that's sort of adding some depth and dimension to it. You can hear that going on. Okay, sounds like everybody just got back from this video shoot, so I'm gonna have to stop for a second here, and I'll come back to this and finish in a second. All right, sorry about that. Had to, everybody got back from a video shoot, so I think there's a lot going on here. So it's a new day, a new shirt, a whole new hair situation going on now. And we'll just pick up right where we left off. We're right in the middle of guitars, so here we go into the chorus. This is really cool part. There's this slide guitar thing that sort of brings in the chorus, and it originally was like a layer of like 6 or 8 tracks or something. I had to collapse it down because there was just too many tracks in this thing, and so I bounced them all together, and all the processing that was on each individual track I ended up doing to the bounce of it, just to save DSP and save tracks. So that's what we're going to be looking at now. So here it is, right here. And you can hear it in context where it comes in the beginning of the chorus. It's really cool. You know, it's a really exciting sound to initiate the chorus. Just a really great launch for the chorus. Super cool. So let's see what we got going on here. Again, this was like, I can't remember, 6 or 8 tracks bounced together, and then we've got all this stuff on here. EQ, just tucking in some low mids, 370 hertz, boosting 2.7K range. This is getting side chained, and so here it is, that same bus 13. It's that same kick sample that was doing side chaining on the synth bass. And I'm doing this on a few of the tracks, the sort of more sustained tracks, to make the whole mix sound like it's being compressed harder than it actually is. The mix got too small if I really hit it that hard with compression, and so when you set up the side chain on things and you hear stuff getting sucked in by the kick drum, it gives you the perception that the whole mix is being compressed harder than it really actually is. Cool effect for this, poppier kind of stuff. Okay, stereo widening here. This is 1.2 dB of the side signals being turned up. And then this looks like a dynamic EQ thing. Let's see what this is doing. Okay, yeah, there's some overtone that was bothering me there. Yeah, you can hear it poking out a little bit. A little whistle in there. Right at, 1700 hertz, right around there. And then, okay, so this is the higher stuff that was sticking out. So here's Soothe doing its thing, just finding frequencies that are out of balance and turning them down without the Soothe. Yeah, that thing, can't say it enough. Super magical. I love Soothe. So here it is back on. Yep, that's good. Okay, a little more mid-range, 2.3K. And then even more of this, like 2.5K, and then tucking in like 230 hertz. So this is this thing that I'm not sure if I'd mentioned yet, that I was saving that sort of 2K to 3K range for anything that needs to be an event that's going to jump out at you. And so this sound, this slide guitar thing is one of those things. So I'm really trying to like voice it so it pokes out right in that 2K to 3K range, because all the other instruments that are just sort of cruising along and sort of padding in and filling in the background, that range gets tucked in a little bit to just kind of warm them up and smooth them out, and then I can use that to have other stuff jump out at you. So that's what's going on here with all those EQ moves. So let's hear it without all of this. And what is this? Okay, there's a transient thing for one particular spot. Not, okay, maybe we'll see what happens with that later on. Okay, so here's without all the EQ. Yeah. It just doesn't have any mid-range presence to it, you know. It's too soft sounding. For something that's really intended to be an exciting, you know, event in this mix. Okay, and then let's see what's going on with this. What happens here? Okay, so this one at the beginning of the second chorus, I really wanted to jump out. And so this is adding a little more smack to the front of it. If I take it off, yeah, you know, it just doesn't hit quite as hard there. Okay, and does that happen again later? No, I didn't need it in this spot, just that one spot. Okay, so that's the slide guitars. And then let's check out these baritone guitars that we added. This was something that was done at Barefoot. And I think there was just all the keyboards and guitars were sort of filling up this sort of mid-range, you know, chordal area, and so I wanted something a little lower just to add some heft to the chorus, and so we did this baritone guitar, and so that sounds like this. And I remember this was something where, you know, I just set up an amp simulator for Keith. We plugged in a baritone guitar, and he started playing along, and you know, got something that would just be, you know, good for capturing the part. I was always intending to reamp this, but the amp sim ended up sounding great, and so I just kept it in the mix. And so we can see what's going on here. Here's a tuner. Here's the amp simulator. So it's the AC30 top boost version. It looks like I'm using a different, this 1x8 custom speaker that seemed to give it the right character, so it owned its own little spot in the mix. And then it's using the Royer 121 microphone emulation. So then here's all the EQ, just taking out some extra lows, adding mid-range. So this is definitely going to be doing that like 2K to 3K stuff to get it to jump out at you, because this is an event type part. When it plays, it does like a call and response with the vocals. Okay, so here's more 2.3K. There's a lot, like 4 dB of it. Here's even more mid-range, so 1100 hertz, something like that. 350 hertz, taking that down. This is just to make room for acoustic guitar and bass and all the other stuff that's floating around down there. And then here's this guy, more 1.5K, even more mid-range. And so if you take all of this stuff off, let's bypass all of this. Yeah, so that's what the amp simulator sounds like, just not near enough mid-range on that. So then here we go, boom, boom, we'll put this stuff back. And here's the event. That bomb, bomb, bomb thing. That I really wanted that to jump out. I think it's a part that the bass was playing. Pino plays that part, and I thought that would be a cool little instrumental hook in the song. So we accentuated with the baritone guitar. So if I turn off all of this EQ, you can see how much it just doesn't really fight through. Yeah, it's just so murky. But so once you put all this stuff on there, finds its little 2K spot in there and cuts right through. All right, so then we got this stuff. Okay, so this is for verse 2 guitar. This is a very, I think, characteristic Keith type part. He does these really cool, like little plucky percussive parts that are good, like groove motivators, syncopated cool parts. Here's okay, so we've got taken out some low mids around 200 hertz. This is adding some mid-range, pulling out a bunch of low mids. I think this EQ was already on there when the session came to me. And then it's sending to some reverbs down here. I'm gonna, oh, you know what? These are solo safe, so I can just leave those. But they're going through the vocal bus. These reverbs were set aside for the vocals. I ended up putting them on this guitar, so. Just sort of a last minute, like, I need some reverb. Oh, there's one. I'll send it there. Okay, so now we can hear it with the reverbs that I ended up using for these. Yeah, it's cool. Just adding a little dimension to it. That's without. And so then here you can see that I turned off half of the guitar. I turn off the double of the guitar, and that's because at that point in the song there's a bunch of other stuff that comes in. An acoustic guitar comes in, some keyboards come in. I needed to make space for all of that stuff, and so I take that electric guitar, plop it off to one side, the acoustic guitar comes in on the other side, and then there's room for everything to have its place. So here you can check it out, how it balances out with the acoustic guitar first.
'Cause I know, and I know, and I know that you just wanna dance in the light.
Here, we'll give the vocals a break until we really get into that. So you can hear how the, you know, how the acoustic guitar comes in, and this guy sort of makes room for it. So then they play off of each other in, you know, left and right speakers. Okay, so now we'll turn on some of the keyboard stuff so you can hear, you know, all the other things that come in there that we have to make space for. So here's with all the keyboards. Cool. Okay, so then next guitar stuff. So in the second chorus, there's a new guitar part that gets added, and it's part of the overall dynamic of this song that, you know, parts are sort of coming and going when you transition from one section to another, and then overall, across the whole song, additional parts are getting added, so the whole thing sort of grows and expands as you travel through the entire song. So second chorus, this guitar part gets added. Another one of you know, Keith's little like percussive, you know, muted, plucky parts. Yeah, this is also getting sidechained by that same kick drum. Okay, and so this guy, EQ going on here, just lopping off a bunch of low end. This looks like settings that were probably already in there. These look like matte stuff. some delay, and then here's the side chaining thing that was going on. So without all of this stuff, sound like this. Yeah, it's a good guitar sound. It sounds like this, probably the same sound that was being used in the verse. Okay, and then, so the second chorus has a tag part to it that you can check out. So here's that. And so more of these big kind of like U2-y edge type guitars, they're actually labeled as edge guitar. I would say a wonderful influence to draw from. I love his guitar. So let's see what's going on here. It looks like this is also an amp sim, so this was something that was already in the session, and I just kept it. The sound was working good. And a bunch of this 1176 Bomb Factory compressor. This is me adding a bunch of mid-range in the range that I was setting aside to have things cut through. And then here's some delay on there. And a little extra attack, transient attack on there. So here it is soloed by itself. This. So a little extra presence on the two that are panned out. So the center one is a little warmer, and then the ones that are on the sides have a little bit of this extra 2.25K. And so when the sound got to me, I think it was something like this. Well, probably definitely had the delay on it, I'm guessing. And so I added this EQ, get it to cut through, and I added this transient designer to get it to attack a little harder, although it doesn't look like it's turned up at all. Just on the middle guy. So in context, and the main thing is this EQ move right here. This is, you know, this whatever it is, 4 dB of 2.3K. That's what makes it own its spot in the mix and go, here you go, you have to listen to me now. Okay, so then we got a thing called guitar hits. Cool, so these are just like guitar events where Keith can like hit a harmonic or get feedback or something like that in some of these transitions and stuff. This seems extremely subtle in this particular spot. I'm not sure if it's even really audible. Yeah, probably should have turned that up. The way I did here. So we'll use that same volume, 5.6. Well, finally got that right. Okay, let's see what else we got. Okay, so this is just guitar effects. I think that is all the guitar. Edge guitar, we did this, we did that. These guitars, what is this? Okay, yeah, let's check this out. This is a new thing towards the end of the song. So this is in the outro of the song. Let me hear what this is first, and then I'll describe it or talk about it. Okay, cool, yeah. Yeah, so just an arpeggiated, you know, clean guitar thing in the end, just adding a little more dimension to the end. So let's hear that. Yeah, I mean, didn't really need that part, and so it didn't really get turned up. So it's just sort of floating around. It's just a ghost in the background. You know, I may have even not realized that it was supposed to be there while I was mixing this. It certainly wasn't needed. Yeah, it looks like I didn't really mess with this too much. So that's guitars, and now let's check out a bunch of keyboard stuff. So probably the first keyboard thing that is significant that comes in is this piano stuff here. So this, I seem to remember, was played at Barefoot. So check it out. Okay, that was already in the session. Hearing some guitar in there somewhere. And so this stuff, this is what was played at Barefoot. And I think Matt played that. So let's see what's going on here. This was my Yamaha Grand. It was probably, you know, a pair of 87s on the piano, and there's two passes, one for the low notes, one for the high notes, so I could have a little more control of the balance between those. So here's the high notes. Okay, this is making it so it pans off to one side. Okay, there's an aggressive move there. And then what's this? Some real tweaky, tweezing stuff. Is this it's not dynamic, so I'm just using a very narrow cue to try and even out some overtones there. And then Valhalla Vintage Verb and CLA 2A. So this is with everything. So that's the original sound just coming from the microphones. Yeah, and I don't think it was even compressed when it was being recorded. So this is panning it. Here's the first EQ. There we are, evening out overtones. Let's see what this is really doing. Yeah, it's a little bit warmer with balancing those overtones a little bit. Okay, then Valhalla Vintage Verb. And then a good amount of smack on there. Yeah, it's really stomping on it. I do like this thing to, you know, give something some impact. It seems to be quite good for that. Okay, so then the low part looks like it's similar. Okay, yeah, no, it's a little different. Okay, so there's that. A bunch of the real high frequency stuff, 15K, and there. This same compressor plug-in, and then this guy. Okay, getting rid of one overtone, really getting rid of an overtone. Yeah, minus 20 dB. So let's see what this is about. Yeah, on that third note, it just pokes out. It almost sounds like a, you know, somebody hitting a note on the vibes or something. It's so out of control. Okay, now with the EQ, Yeah. That's essential. I mean, that thing it just sounds crazy with that overtones poking out. Okay, so without everything, let's just compare, see what all happened here. Turn on the compressor first so we can hear this. So there's compression. Here's the first round of EQ added in. This is adding that real high presence. And this is taking out the overtone. So there it is with all the stuff on it. I think it pretty much stays like that. There's a little bit of extra EQ going on here. So this guy gets automated a bit. So what happens later on? Let's see if this changes. Okay, yeah, so here in the second verse, I had to scoop it out more and make room for other things that are going on. Yeah, this would really mess with the acoustic guitar. That's important. Yeah. Yeah, it's just all up in that acoustic guitar range. So there you go, there's piano stuff. Let's see what else we got. There's another little piano guy here. What is this? Okay, yeah, interesting. Really? Yeah, I think that was just a different attempt to try and fill that response spot, and I liked the guitars better. So you go away. Okay, so is that that's not all the keyboards. There's a bunch of other stuff going on here. Okay, so pre-chorus plucks. This stuff generally is usually, these synth pads, a lot of times don't get a lot of processing, so this will be easy. Sidechained by this same kick sample. I was playing with the timing of this a little bit to get it to feel right in the mix. So there's no EQ or anything. And then more plucky stuff. Yeah, so this is a lot brighter. This I worked on a bit. So here's that same side chaining going on. This I delayed also just to get it to feel right. And so this, adding some brightness but pulling out in that 2K range. And this is that thing I was talking about. So this thing is just sort of cruising along as part of the overall sound. And I needed that 2.5K range for other stuff to jump out and be events. So I'm taking it out of this guy. Here we are tucking in some sort of overtone. So let's see what all of this is doing. And then what's this? Is it, yeah, transient stuff, okay. And then what is this guy? Does this get automated or something? Okay, I'm gonna disable that. So I don't accidentally turn it on because we're not using that. What's this guy? Okay, there's the light. We can leave that on there. Okay, so there's the original sound. So this is just adding a kind of chorusy effect to it. And it's up a little bit. Yeah, maybe the pitch was leaning a little low on this, and then here's the side chaining. So we can hear it with that. And then here I'm tucking in that 2.3K range and adding the airier top end. Okay, and then here's this overtone that was bumming me out. Yeah, there's a real whistle up there that was poking out at me. And then this like mid-range stuff, this 460 hertz, or this is probably, yeah, closer to 400 hertz, was a little too boomy, so I just lopped everything off at a certain point to just get it out of the way. Yeah, that doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Had to turn that down. And there it is with the transient designer. Nice little percussive attack gets added. So in context. And so then if we bypass all this stuff, this is what it was. Yeah, it just kind of gets lost, you know, in that low mid-range soup down there. And then with everybody back on. So it kind of sits right above, you know, where that lower baritone guitar is and the acoustic guitar and some of the other stuff that's floating around down there, the bass guitar, all that. Okay, so then we have this guy, Reek Print. Don't know what this is, but more sidechainy stuff. Okay, so it looks like I took off some buzzy high end on this. This is just a pad in the second verse. And it adds to this. Both of these have the sidechain going on. So without the low pass, yeah, I mean, that's very, very subtle. I'm not even sure that that's a difference that you'd really hear, but, you know, this may have already been on there. And so I guess it was just to make sure that it's not interfering with the guitar and the cymbals and percussion and vocals, all the other stuff that's sort of in that upper range. And so then this pad cruises through kind of everything. Once it comes in, it's just always there. So that's the chorus vibe, and all it has is a sidechain thing. We've seen that a bunch. And then here, okay, yeah, so that's pre-chorus, chorus, and then it turns into, yeah, so it just kind of cruises through, does the same thing through the whole jam. Cool. Okay, so then we did the piano, so that's keyboards. Vocals, here we go. Okay. So yeah, you can see a little bit of a comp going on here. We'll start with just his lead vocal. Whole lot of stuff going on here. Let's see what we got.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning. Sometimes you get a little bit insecure.
Yeah, so this is like a high overtone, probably on the E sounds in his voice. When he's singing harder, it'll start to activate. This EQ is probably already in there. So double lock this thing. Push the vocal right in front of your face. More compression. I think all of this was already in there. So a little bit of overall tuning stuff going on.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened.
Okay, this is me adding even more airy high end, 15K there.
Sometimes you get a little bit insecure.
Here's even more airy high end.
Sometimes you wonder
Yeah, I don't know if that was me or not. That could have been Matt. Okay, so this is definitely a Matt thing. He'll do 2 de-essers. One that's tuned into a specific overtone in the sibilants. So in this case, it's like 4.6K. And then after that, he'll do one that gets everything sort of above. And it's a...
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning. Sometimes you get...
Okay, and then what's this? Okay, this is probably me automating some stuff, I think. So a little bit of 2.5K getting boosted here, a little bit of 600 hertz getting boosted there. So let's see what happens. Turn off all of this stuff. Oh my Lord, there's so much going on here. So I think this was recorded in with just nothing, you know.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning.
Still hearing the reverbs.
Sometimes you get a little bit insecure. Sometimes you wonder if you're even good enough.
Oh yeah, they're up here.
Hiding from the morning when it's too much. But this
Okay, so we'll start adding this stuff back in.
sometimes you get a little bit frightened.
So that was me trying to grab some high harsh bits.
Sometimes you get
There's the
a little
overall
bit
EQ,
insecure.
a little extra mid-range here, a little top there.
Sometimes you wonder if
There's
you're
Devil
even
Lock
good
doing its
enough.
thing.
Hiding from the morning
So it's
when too
half
much.
blend,
There's so
no
much
distortion.
waiting behind the door.
Yeah, so no distortion.
I know,
And, you know, it's subtle compression, or as subtle as that thing gets. It's not a particularly subtle plugin, but I'm trying to make it subtle. And then here's good old R compressor.
Sometimes you get a
This is
little
just
bit
all there to just
frightened,
hold the vocal
afraid
right in your
of the
face.
wind and the lightning. Sometimes you get a little bit
Here's a
insecure.
little bit of this overall tuning stuff. You know, it's not like Keith needs this to sound in tune. You can tell when it's off, the vocal still sounds in tune. But I think it's just part of the sound and style of this poppier stuff, you know. And then, okay, so here's the extra airy top end.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened.
Yeah, it's cool. It opens up the top end.
And the lightning. Sometimes you get a little bit insecure.
And then even more of it here.
Sometimes you wonder
And then
if
the
you're
de-essers.
good enough. Hiding from the morning when it's too
And then
much.
that little extra
There's
mid-range
so
stuff.
much waiting behind the door.
And so there it all is.
Sometimes you get a little bit frightened, afraid of the wind and the lightning.
And so then when it gets into the chorus, looks like similar settings, and it's triple tracked. So it's, you know, like a big, not a huge layer, but basically a center one that's featured, and then a double that gets panned out each direction to give it a little width to the lead vocal. And so let's see what we have going on here. Yeah, so this is just a high pass. Then CLA 76, just holding it in your face. A little bit of the tuning stuff. 12K, or almost 12 dB of 15K. Here's a boost at 12K. It gets broadened out a little bit. The de-essers. Here was that putting some mid-range back in after all of the compression and stuff. And then here's me trying to grab some little harshy bits. So let's hear these guys together.
So just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your horses run.
And then here's all the reverb and stuff on there. So there's an echo going on. Okay, so this is, yeah, okay, this is this glitch. It's not showing me the settings here. So this is a timed delay of some sort. Unfortunately, I can't see the what the value is there. And then here's another one with a reverb attached to it. So this is our verb. So this is that same thing, or no, this was the one that was on the guitar. And so then here's more of that. So this reverb, I see. So this one is letting some of the delay through. And this is, so ultimately at the end of the day, I didn't really notice this before, but there's actual dry vocal getting through on this auxiliary return. That's a little odd to me. I think this was already in the session. I wouldn't normally do that, but that's okay. It all worked out. And so then this is one of my things. I love this. What is this? Revibe, Revibe 2, and the natural plate setting. This is a preset that I created in it that I use a fair amount on vocals. And then a little delay after that basically just sort of adds an extra little sort of swell in the decay of the reverb on there. And then a vocal widening thing. So is this on this stuff? Let's see. Nope. It's not on there. It's probably on this stuff. Yeah, this vocal widening thing. So this is minus 10, plus 10, and two different delays, 13 milliseconds, 23 milliseconds. So this is a preset that I basically replicated that I used a lot in my Eventide H3000. It was just like a vocal widening thing, making it sound like it was doubled. And so I recreated it with Pitch 2, I believe is this plugin. Yeah, Pitch 2, with the Avid plugins. And so, you know, in this case, it's being used like on this double that comes in. It's like a call and response vocal, and it just puts it in a different dimension. So we'll check all of that stuff out. But right now, let's just see what's going on with the lead vocals. I'm going to mute all the reverbs for a second.
So just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for.
Yeah, so all this is it's really just getting the vocals to just stay right in your face and get them to cut through, you know, in the vocal range. So
just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your
so here it is without the de-essing.
So just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost.
So let's hear that in context. This will be interesting.
So just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young.
So here, let's put it back in, because that's really sticking out, man. Like if you try and turn this mix up, those things will just like cut your head off. So check it out.
So just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what you are.
And so there you go. It just, you know, tucks them right in. It feels, you know, much more connected to where the vocal's at. I mean, it's all that compression that just makes all the sibilants just jump out way too loud. So you have to de-ess it. I always de-ess after the compressor. I've found that like if you de-ess before a compressor, the compressor just undoes your de-essing. So it's better to like let the compressor do its thing and then de-ess as much as you need to in order to fix what the compressor's doing. So that's what's happening here. You know, all the compression is happening earlier in the chain, and then it gets de-essed afterwards. So then the lead vocals with its reverbs and stuff, let's turn those back on.
Just let your horses run to the limit.
Yeah, it's feels like it's more part of the overall picture.
Lost and young, I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your horses run.
Okay, so now we'll check these guys out. Okay, so these are panned all the way out. I want to put them in a different space than the lead vocals. And you can see the main lead vocal is at -2. It's panned in the center. And the double and triple are like a little more than 8 dB lower, and they're panned out like 65. So it's not super wide, because I have a lot of other stuff that is panned super wide. There's a bunch of guitars and keyboards and other elements that are all the way panned out. I want the vocals to be in a little bit, so they're just a little bit more of a center focus to them. And then there can be a contrast between these lead vocals and, you know, whatever background vocals or other things could be wider, and everything is sort of occupying a different, you know, space as far as its width. And so this is a good example. This guy here, which is a call and response for the lead vocal, is panned all the way out and has this bus 3334 vocal widening effect on it, just to try and really push it out there. So it does this.
Run, run, run.
And in context, you'll really hear them sit in a different place in the stereo field. So I'll show you what this this vocal wide thing does. This goes way back. I've been using this trick way back into the 90s. I had an H3000, you know, probably we got that thing in the late 80s, maybe. Could have been that early. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably late 80s we got our first H3000, and so I've been using this trick ever since. So here it is with.
Run, run, run.
Here it is without.
Run, run, run.
And let's see if I did the thing where. Nope, I didn't. Okay, so sometimes what I'll do is I'll pan opposite. And so, did I do it here? No, it just follows this panning. Yeah, so what'll happen is this goes to a thing that's slightly delayed and pitched that ends up coming to the opposite speaker. And so it ends up sort of balancing things out. If there's, you know, with doubled vocals, if there's spots that don't match up, what ends up happening is you have some of this performance show up on the opposite side, some of this performance showing up on the opposite side, and it sort of glues it all together better. But in this case, they're all sort of staying on their individual sides. His performances were really, you know, very consistent, so there's no need to sort of mush them together like that. So then these guys, it looks like a lot of the similar stuff. There's a high pass there, the CLA 76 to push it in your face. This, a little more mid-range in this, because this is a little more of an event that needs to pop out at you than this high airy top-end stuff. Here's this guy. It's kind of the same vocal rig, you know, for a lot of this stuff. And then here's some de-essing going on, pulling out more low mids just to put this more in the sort of high mid range, and then a little more de-essing going on there, and a bunch of effects going on. So what is this? This is 4142. Okay, that's this guy. So this is even more of this effect turned up a lot. So yeah, with longer delays. So, and maybe I did the, nope, I didn't do the trick there either. Okay, so I gotta turn this on. So then we'll get the full effect on these.
Run, run, run.
Yeah. So here, let's label this.
Run, run, run.
Yeah, so you get a little more slappy thing on there. So in context.
Your horses run, 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 run.
Okay, yeah.
Your horses
That sounds more like what I remember hearing. This guy was pretty important. This is doing a lot more than this one is. I just needed extra of that with a little more delay to put it more in its own space. So this, it's a similar thing. It's the same detuning, except this is 53 milliseconds and 40 milliseconds. One of the things that I got in the habit of doing is I typically try and grab numbers. This one is not that are prime numbers. When you start stacking a lot of delays, prime numbers that tend to add up better. It's because of the harmonic series and stuff. That was a whole Brian May thing. He did that on the stomp clap for We Will Rock You. That was where I heard about it from. And so, okay, so there's that guy. So what's some of this other stuff? So there's a double that comes in here. We're back in the verse pre-chorus stuff. So let's check these out. There's a little double here.
From the morning when it's too much, but there's so much waiting behind.
Yeah, just to highlight that one lyric, it's too much, to put that in a different space. So these little guys right here kind of jump out at you.
It's too much.
Yeah, much more effecty there, just to really sort of, bring attention to that line. And so what's going on here? I was playing with some pitching type stuff on those, and it looks like, oh, maybe that happens later somewhere. They may have maybe they were a little too tight in pitch. Okay, an aggressive high pass, the Devil Lock, CLA. So this is a similar chain. Oh, it's getting tuned. Yeah, so these probably wouldn't even do anything once they get tuned. Then, that super airy high-end thing, de-esser. So this is all very similar to the other stuff. And here's the slap delay that you hear on there. Yeah, that's the 120 millisecond thing that you're hearing. So in context.
From the morning when it's too much, but there's so much waiting behind the door.
Okay, and then a double comes in here.
And I know that you just wanna dance in the light. Don't you know?
And then this voice, two doubles for that line, so puts it in a different space in the stereo field, so the vocal widens out, and he goes into that falsetto thing. And I think about a lot of this stuff very similar to how orchestras will arrange parts, or music is arranged for orchestras. Well, they'll have a theme, and they'll just change the textures that play the theme a lot of times. And so, that's kind of what's happening here. Is instead of just having one voice just go through and sing all the parts, as this melody is sort of evolving and traveling through, they're having different, it's like having different instruments in the orchestra jump in to highlight different parts of the melody and add a different feeling to different parts of the melody. And so that's basically what's happening here. So, like an arranger wouldn't, take a Mozart composition and just have one instrument play the melody the whole way. Sometimes it'll be clarinets, and then it gets doubled by the strings, and then there's another section where the horns come in, or the strings will take over, whatever, and it just adds a different feeling to things, and adds to the dynamics of how the melody develops. And so it's a similar thing here. In pop music, there's, I think, an inclination to always have these little ear candy things happening to keep your attention. Okay, we're gonna ignore that. So it seems like in pop music that that there's this inclination to always have new interesting stuff happening, and it makes sense. It's a world of short attention spans, and so you're always having these events to sort of catch your attention and keep you engaged as the song is sort of traveling through, and this is kind of one of those things. So it's like just the vocal here, and then that little delay thing happens, then a double, then a stereo double, then back to the double again, And so they're all things that just, you know, catch your attention and keep your attention, keep you engaged in the song as it's traveling through. Okay, so we got all this stuff. And then what's this here? So this is similar. This is going to be another one of those kind of tricks. So this is the second pre-chorus.
'Cause I know that you just wanna dance in the light.
Okay, so second pre-chorus, we want to add something new, so they add a harmony to that spot where it previously just went to a stereo double. So now you get this.
'Cause I know that you just wanna dance in the light. Don't you know, don't you know, don't you know?
Yeah, and there's more instrumentation going on and stuff. Okay, so that's all this stuff, and it's sort of the same thing. Here's the call and response in the chorus. There's a thing here in the bridge. So here's his lead vocal, and I think it's a similar thing where lines just get highlighted and doubled in the bridge.
And I know that you just wanna dance in the light.
Yeah, so stereo double to widen out that part, pull your attention to that part.
'Cause I know that you just wanna dance in the light.
So then there it is with the harmony.
Don't you know?
Okay, and so then there's this extra stuff that comes in.
'Cause I know that you just wanna dance in the light.
Okay, yeah, so
Don't you know, don't you know, don't you know? You let your horses run.
okay, so there's this counter melody that happens here, and this I worked on a bit. I had to figure out a way to get this to be in its own space. So yeah, so here's a plate reverb. I wanted to kind of put this off in the distance, and I seem to remember there was a couple of rounds going around on this with Keith to just get this just right, so it wasn't too far away, but wasn't, you know, distracting from the main vocal. So this is where we ended up with it with these guys.
'Cause I know.
Yeah, so there's
You're alive.
reverb on the channel itself, and then more reverb here that gets automated on and off. And so these guys,
'Cause I know that you just wanna dance in the light. Don't you know, don't you know, don't you know? You're alive, you're alive.
and so then this stays sort of ambient sounding, and there's a main lead vocal that comes in here. And I think this was something.
You're alive, you're alive.
I think this was another thing that was done later on. I felt like this transition could be more exciting. I think that happened at the Barefoot stuff. And so we replaced this with this performance. But I just felt like it was, you know, a more exciting launch into the last chorus. And these guys are sort of filling in the background. So.
You're alive, you're alive.
Okay, and so this is also where we have all this bridge stuff going on. There's piano, looks like piano verb. There's this guy, ambient piano part. Chords there on the piano. Here's the synth pad, fades in. The little plucky And there's another tweaky patty part that comes in the bridge. There's no processing on it. The sound was good as it was. There's a little guitar effect here that happens towards the end of the bridge, going into the last chorus. Yeah, again, probably pretty subtle. There's a lot going on there, so not how much you're going to hear that. Big bass slide, Pino dropping in there. Yeah, nice big slide on the bass. I love that. And then, okay, so way down here, we hadn't touched on the background vocals, so this is a big layer, and this was something that also got redone in this in the Barefoot round of stuff. So let's turn all these background vocals on. Da, 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 da. Ton of stuff here. Okay. Okay, so here we are at the back of the first chorus, so you can check out with these background vocals.
Just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you.
And so the thing that got changed with the reason these background vocals were redone was because the original version didn't hold out on the word run, and it felt a little awkward to me to just have them stop. And so I wanted to sort of like have them ease out as the lead vocals come back in. So we ended up redoing those. So this is what they sound like all by themselves. This is a layer of Keith singing it a bunch of times, and then the girl Lindsay is singing it a bunch. She did a few on the note that she sang in there.
Let your horses run. Let's be lost and young.
The note is arranged, or the part is arranged, the background vocals add up with the lead vocal to complete the chord. It's like a three-part harmony in there, possibly more. It sounds like there's an octave in there. But yeah, so the chord is completed by the lead vocal when you hear it with the lead vocals in there. So here, let's hear all of that together. That'll be cool.
So just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your horses run.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful part, you know. Once you get everybody in there balanced right, it's just a big, beautiful, you know, harmony part on the vocal. And so this stuff, you know, it's the same processing. You can tell it got duplicated across all of this stuff. So the same EQ, a little extra highs. This is very similar to what's being used on the rest of the stuff. I just sort of stuck with the same, you know, general approach. It's a little pitch tightening in there. And so then the de-essing stuff, and then even more de-essing stuff. three de-essers in series to try and get these S's right. And really, I think since they're doubling what the lead vocal is saying, I really don't need the S's from these background vocals, so I really want to tame those and let it lead, all the sibilants be led by the lead vocal. So here it is in context one more time.
Just let your horses run to the limit like never before. Let's be lost and young. I wanna show you what your heart is made for. Let your
Okay.
horses run.
And so there's the run, run, runs that we had checked in on earlier. Because it was part of this vocal double here. There's even more of them here. So there's a stack of these run, run, runs.
Run, run, run.
Very similar. It sounds like these are high passed more aggressively. Yeah, so this is me just putting them in more of like a mid-rangey space up higher so they pop out more. And then there's this O's that happen, O, 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 O. And so that's these guys. And so these I think I bounced down. And it's combined with these. And these have a bunch of slap on them. Also probably high passed aggressively. Yeah, it's high passed at like 400 hertz, taking out 700. And this, yeah, spring reverb. Okay, yeah, cool. And a healthy amount of it as well. Yeah, just put these in their own space. So without this little spring, I really like this air spring reverb. It's super tweaky sounding. So that's without it. Yeah, it just sort of enhances the mid-range of it. And so then, let's see, so these guys, okay, so they all get bussed here. More EQ, so more brightening, and taking out mid-range, low-mid stuff. More compression. More reverb, so this is like a big church thing. Devilock, more compression. This is going pretty hard too, yeah. Oh, but this was turned, all these are turned all the way down. So I don't know how aggressive that really is. And then a little more air on there. So let's see, we'll bypass all of this stuff. So this is, you know, it's kind of funny, like that's, when you put a mic in front of a human being and they sing, that's what it sounds like. But, you know, with this modern stuff, that's not going to cut it, not even close. So you got to do all this to it. And now it'll have its little spot in the mix. Yeah. So nice space on there. I think that was a team effort on that one. There was some cool effects on there that on this session when it first came in, and I think I added the spring reverb, that air spring reverb, some of the other stuff. And so then this is sending to some of the other reverbs and things that are being used for the vocals, bus 5 and 6. And then this, oh, and this is the stereo widening thing that I used up here. So, okay, yeah, this is just a slap. This is another preset that I made, Evie stereo slap. It's real easy to duplicate if you guys want to use this. And so it's just 91 milliseconds on one side, 170 milliseconds on the other side, or 167 milliseconds on the other side. And it's just good for, you know, adding this sort of like slappy stereo space on something. And, you know, it's all the way wet. There's no modulation or anything going on. But here, check it out with and without this. I think this is a big part of it. Okay, yeah, they start doing this ooh part. Yeah, so there's with the extra slap in context. So yeah, so there's all the oohs. That stuff comes back again at the end of the song. So here's the, there's the O's. And then the whole song just fades out. He's got some cool improvs in the end. It's sailing off. So I think that's everything. I mean, man, that's a lot. Like, just going through it, to actually really go through and, you know, look at every single plugin and plugin setting and hear it with and without and stuff, like that's a huge endeavor. And so, I mean, I think I kind of skimmed through some stuff as it was starting to repeat, you know, in there. And so I hope, you know, I got enough of it so you can really understand how all of that came together. That's really the point of this, is to really be able to understand from beginning to end how this mix works and the choices that were made along the way to try and make it work, and hopefully get to a place where, you know, the artist is happy, the label's happy, everybody's, you know, wants to put it out there. I'm happy. I'm proud to have my name on it. You know, I felt great about this mix. It's very uncommon for me that it's entirely in the box, but it worked for this one. Even every time it comes on, I hit play on this thing. It feels satisfying to me. I was happy with the way it turned out. So, you know, it is possible, even for, you know, a sentimental old analog dude like myself, to mix something in the box and have it work out and have me even be happy with it. So I hope that was helpful. I know that was a lot to absorb, and but it's a good example how I approach, you know, poppier, this world of kind of like pop country stuff. I love working on Keith's stuff. He's just so musical, so passionate. I'm hoping at some point I might be able to get him in here and we can talk about more the recording side of it. I've never actually recorded a whole song with him from the beginning. You know, this one we worked to get, you know, a little bit on this one. I've mostly just mixed for him, but he's an incredibly passionate, dedicated record maker. I love working with him, and he pushes me, you know, to really, you know, be on my toes and deliver something to him that is really, really exceptional, or do my best to do that. So, so hopefully we'll be able to talk with him a little bit about how he approaches things, you know, his whole take on making records. So thank you for checking it out. I'll see you the next time. Bye.
You put the whoozie on the whatsy, attach the whatsy to the whoozie, connect the thingamajig to the thingamabob, and that'll make the whatchamacallit go. You hook the gidget to the gadget, adjust the gadget to the gidget, unhook the dingley-dang from the diddly-doo.